Greetings, everybody, and good morning. It's still morning. It's 11:30, so I'm proud of myself for being up before noon and up and rolling before noon on New Year's Day. So this marks the end of our holiday season here in the States. I think the first day of the holiday season. Oh, here's a nut for Rhett. That used to be her favorite. That was almond. Um, but pistachios are definitely her favorite now. Yeah, so basically, I think the beginning of our holiday season is in like the day before Thanksgiving, probably. And then the end of our holiday season is usually New Year's Day. Um, I think that this year, for some people, it's like an extra day, because since New Year's Day falls on Thursday, that left Friday to be like an extra holiday season. So that's sort of a bonus. So that's cool. Um, I have to work tomorrow, but I don't have to work tomorrow because I have like vacation and sick days and stuff like that. But I don't feel sick, so I definitely can't use a sick day and vacation. Probably I haven't built up. I've only been there for it'll be 2 months. It is 2 months as of today. So I think we get 10 hours of vacation per month, I believe. 5 hours per pay period, and then there's two pay periods a month. So I think I have like 2.5 days of vacation banked. I haven't figured out where I could see that yet. But it is New Year's Day, so this is a good day to sort of just. There's a couple things I want to make sure. And one thing I make sure of is that the me from 2023 would not be able to read the code that I write in 2026. And I would say that is definitely true. There is absolutely no way I could have made heads or tails of this way back then. Like what this does, I definitely would not have liked this idea. I don't know if I like it now. Um, and I definitely, it's been hard. But one of the things is like if any signal inside of here fires, then all of this code runs. So there's kind of two things in this effect function. One is like, hey, there's things I want to look at, and two is there's code I want to run. And there's no way to really separate, like, say, oh, well, when this runs, then do this, but when that's run, no, everything in the effect runs every single time. Anything that it's listening for changes. That was a weird thing for me because RxJS is like so specific. So, anyway, so I do give myself a check on that. I think that the other big question is that I always have to ask myself is, am I on the right track with technology? And I definitely think that is the case. And I think, again, like, so if we were to go back to I want to say maybe 1994, 1993, there was a lot of people writing code. I was writing code. I was writing all these cool things in like Visual Basic and in Access and in Basic and C. I was writing a little bit of C, a little bit of C++. I don't know if I was writing C++, but I was definitely writing C. I don't know that I was doing objects yet. The concept of object-oriented coding. I don't know if I had gotten to there yet, but hadn't quite started Perl yet. There was just like, but that's what we were working on. And the thing is like I would write these cool projects, these little programs and stuff that would do stuff, and then I would like have to try to convert it into an executable that then sometimes would run on a friend's computer or not. And they would have to take a floppy from me and go put it on there. And then they had like a lot of risk of getting like viruses and stuff like that. So basically, this browser concept came out, and it was pretty pathetic. It's just like literally some really awkward looking text and whatever. And then it got to where you could do pictures, and then once you could do pictures, then that was it, because that opened up the whole like pornography and stuff like that. And then that was it. It was like the browser was not going anywhere. And that is what, like today, I don't think that that would be enough to get the browser going. But that's kind of what got its nose. That's what got its the camel. There's like a saying, the camel's nose in the tent. That's what got the camel's nose in the tent. But once that happened, basically what happened is they started adding scripting, the ability to write script. At first, they tried to do like Java applets, and that did not work at all. But then they started doing like JavaScript and JScript and VBScript and all these different scripting languages that could run in the browser, depending on which browser you used and stuff like that. And that was good. That was really, really good. And now, then I could write little programs, and then I could just call someone up and say, "Oh, go to this URL," and then they could see it, right? It got rid of the whole distribution effect. So I think that was when the browser was like unstoppable. Like once it became like the best way to share software, then or the easiest way, not the best way, the easiest way. Because before that, like I used to go into like you could go into any random convenience store, any zoo, any little business anywhere, and they would have a wall full of CDs that you could buy for like $1 or $2, and then you got home and you could plug it in and you could try it out, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But once we could get to go into the browser, and you could see the code, you could see the pictures, you could see whatever, you see movies, all that stuff. Once that, it was over, right? And then what started happening was like a lot of companies started saying, okay, we're going to invest a bunch of money into like hardware, software solutions, and all that. And then they found out that like it's really, really difficult to get hardware. And And so that's when it was just kind of like, wow, so I could write some hardware that has a browser. And then if I need to run my program in a different piece of hardware, all I have to do is create a browser. And then that works everywhere. And then, and that was really like the main thing. And then JavaScript ended up being like kind of the first language that kind of stuck. And I think the main thing JavaScript had going for it is it was so extendable, right? Like you could easily just add your own functions and your own things to the actual JavaScript. Um, so one, and so that was, sort of on the progression. And then so today, like every time something says, "Oh, the browser's dead," "Oh, JavaScript's dead," I'm just like, I don't. You still haven't dealt with the original reason on why the browser dominated to begin with, and that's because it's a standard application that runs code and it's easy to deploy and easy to use everywhere. Until whatever Android or whatever new thing comes around, um, until it can do that, it has no chance, right? So it doesn't do the fundamental thing. Now, I would say, I can't remember what it was, but I know that like when I worked for this company called Brightline, which I believe I started working for them in 1999, um, I wrote JavaScript for them. They had like 20 developers and they were all Java developers. And then they had me and my boss, and we were the only people that knew HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And once at that point, what I had to do is I would literally write like 5 lines of code max. And then I would go to like Internet Explorer 4, Internet Explorer 4.5, Internet Explorer 5. I would try all three of those. And there were times where things would work in 4 and 5, but not in 4.5. And like 20% of the people out there were on 4.5. So, we were kind of stuck. We had to make it work on that. And then I would do it on Netscape, and then I would do it on Firefox, and then and so it was just kind of like you had to write. It was very slow and arduous to write code. You would just write a few lines and then test it, write a few lines, and then that is I can't remember when, but I want to say it was probably like 2002. I started to get into jQuery, and that was the main thing that jQuery fixed was they handled that. So if a browser came out A new browser came out. They had a whole bunch of functions, and they made sure that their functions worked everywhere. So whenever something changed, they would roll out a new jQuery, a new version of jQuery, and all that, and it sort of smoothed that all out. But now everything uses the same JavaScript, right? It's the same. There's no variance. So the very reason that jQuery existed was created has been solved, and that is like I believe I don't know this for a fact. I don't think anyone can tell anymore, but I believe jQuery is still the most dominant library, JavaScript library out there. It's still everywhere. Um, it's only around because of momentum, because there was a bunch of libraries and stuff that were built along with it, and it's to maintain those libraries. And some of those things are still the best thing ever. And I know that it sort of got itself sort of entrenched in everything because they were really the first one to handle um, Web 2.0 or communication like real time updates to the browser from server communications without reloads and stuff like that. They're the first ones to really get that working really well. So I knew a lot of places that was literally the only reason they even had jQuery. I actually had a boss that thought that that was the only reason jQuery was ever invented was for it was a library to communicate between the server and the browser without reloads. Like she thought that, that was literally the only reason it was ever invented. Now, if you fast forward, it's still around today. It's still very, very popular. I don't think you can find work in it, but I think that it's still around. It's still good to know. Um, but then there was like a really rough time, right? So, like, I've been coding since 1979, but I've been paid to code. I guess I started getting a little bit of money for coding in like 1996. Um, and then it kind of became my profession more like in 1999, 1997, maybe 1998, and then it became then web became my coding profession like in 2000, 1999. Well, the thing is there was a point in time there where like the libraries were just rolling out and the frameworks were rolling out. There was like one called YUI, which was Yahoo's, which may have been like the first, in my opinion, like the first really good framework that was really, really good. But it would take like a year and a half, maybe 2 years to really get it, to really understand it. And then there was one called Dojo that came out. There was one called Backbone. Backbone was a big one. It was all kinds of them. They would just roll out like every 6 months. There'd be 3 or 4 new ones. And so what I would have to do is um, I would go to dice.com and I would type in the word HTML and search for all jobs, and I would look to see what libraries were actually getting paid, people were actually getting paid to do, and then I would like sort of narrow it down to a few, and then I'd start to study and learn about those, and all that, because like there was just no way, like if you knew Dojo in maybe 2002, you could make like $90 an hour, but if you knew Dojo in 1990 in 2000 did I say 1990? In 2002, if you knew Dojo, you could probably make like $90 an hour, maybe 2005. In 2010, you were worthless, right? Like it went from being like, Backbone was another one where like at some points, if you knew Backbone, you were like, you could you could write your own. Like people would pay you a ton of money to it, and then like a few years later, you couldn't find a job to save your life. So that was just sort of the reality we lived in. But at the same time, what was happening was there were like components that people wanted to build, and those components would only work on some browsers. And so that's when React kind of came out, and Facebook, because Facebook really wanted everybody to be able to put like little Facebook widgets on on any system anywhere. So they came out with React, and React is much, much like jQuery, in which, like, the problem that it was invented to solve, which was to be able to create components that work everywhere, has since been solved. And that's called web components. Web components solve the problem that React was invented for. But React is still huge and it's still got momentum. So, I do think React is a good, like, very, very good profession to be in. But I don't. I prefer Angular. Now, Angular. The reason I think Angular is still the dominant one is because is the dominant one going forward is because it solves a problem, and they're the only ones, as far as I can tell, that solve it. In that it's for building enterprise level applications, web applications, and they have it built right into it that every 6 months they roll out a new breaking version, new build. So they constantly, like, this concept of effect wasn't even, I don't even think it was a concept when Angular started. Now it's part of the foundation of any new Angular application. Um, so that is like kind of um, the that's kind of thing that you see, and you're learning new things all the time and you're moving along, and if they see something in some other library, they'll just absorb it very quickly. And that's Google will do an analysis and decide if it what features are in some new framework, and they'll cherry pick out the best features and they'll absorb them into Angular, and that is huge. And so now I don't have to go to Dice and type in HTML and see what's going on. I can just stay with the latest Angular, which is so much easier. So, so probably for New Year's, two things that I always want to make sure of is that A, I'm writing code that I wouldn't have been able to understand 3 years ago, and B, I'm uh, I'm working on a framework that has legs and will probably be dominant in the future. Um, so that is that, and I hope everyone had a great 2025. I definitely will say that I think the last day of 2025 was a lot better than the first day. Um, as, I definitely feel much more optimistic, uh, emotionally and mentally, and my body is so much healthier today than it was um, at the end of at the beginning of 2025. I don't really understand what was going on, but I had a lot of health issues that have just suddenly just magically gone away since over the year. So that is a good thing. Um, and yeah, so it's all good. I think this is I think we're set up for a lot of success in 2026, and I'm looking forward to it. Everybody, happy coding. Bye.